To be able to deliver good quality code, a high level of rigor is quite important. Let me get back to that in a moment, as we are continuing from the last video when we used GPT 5.3, the newly released model, to develop the core search capability in no pressure and to also add the public side search on the public UI. It was a long, arduous and tiring process, and we didn't finish adding the admin side, which was also planned, so the two-part series became a three-part series, and this is part 3. Between part 2, so the previous video, and this video, I checked what sort of code quality GPT 5.3 was delivering, and sadly, I have to say, it wasn't very good. Rigour. That was one of the positives of 5.2. It would follow the rules, it would ensure that all the different bits and pieces in the code actually fit together. The documentation was always kept up to date. This is so very important to avoid all the confusion that can come when documentation is disconnected from the code. And sadly, 5.3 was not up to scratch. And in fact, there were warning signs right at the beginning of the process because 5.3 simply set the status of the documents to requirement and not to be reviewed, which is the proper first state of the featured documents. Having said that, to a large extent, the code is still usable, and 5.2 fixed the issues that 5.3 created. So now we are back on track. We are going to use 5.2 again, and this time we intend to finish the complete search capability, including the admin side. In fact, we will have two objectives for this video. The first is to discuss how the admin side works in no pressure, what are the components and how it's structured, and then the main part is the actual implementation of the search capability in the admin side. So let's get started. This is the story of No Pressure, the AI native, tiny little website system. Early in my career, I used to work in telecommunications. I used to program different kinds of equipment like phones and switches. And the way this worked was that these were complicated, so you went to a training where you learned all the codes, settings, what they did, how did you program them, and then you could apply that. So there was a kind of workflow, but the workflow was completely in the person, in the human side, so to say. The equipment itself was there. It could do a lot of things. It was quite sophisticated, but to configure and program it, you had to first learn everything about it, even the interactions between the different components and settings, and then you could go and program them. Now, this was decades ago, so you might expect things have changed since then. And if you go on Facebook, you kind of get an impression of, being able to do things. But if you go on the marketing side, so the administration side of Facebook, I would say it's not very different from a switch. You really have to know what you are doing. It's not necessarily intuitive. Well, to be fair, I'm not sure that Facebook itself is always very intuitive, but let's say you use Google Docs or Google Sheet. It's actually a pretty good system and comfortable to use. But if you go on Google's cloud platform and the console and you need to set things up, it's complicated. And if you go on AWS console, it's really complicated. There are tons of interdependent settings and switches, and you have to set up something in one part of the system to be able to set up something else somewhere else, and you have to do it in the right order, otherwise you don't have something that you needed, and then you have to go back, and it's a mess. And for this very reason, AWS and Google and everyone is AI-ificating these systems so that you can interact with them in a more comfortable and human way, hopefully. So we are not on the wrong track if you expect no pressure, the AI native tiny little website system to behave similarly, that the administration side should also be something where you can use AI and interact with it that way. You don't need to know what the features are, the capabilities are. You should then be able to talk to the system and get it to configure itself for you. So what does this mean in practice? Without going into a lot of details, on the one hand we have things that we can configure. We can call these domains, like network, ports, certificates, or tags and roles and users. So these are domains, and you have primitives in those domains, like creating a new user or changing the port the system is listening on. And on the other hand, you have those who want to configure the system, right? You have people, and the people would use the web interface or the CLI to communicate with the system and explain what they want to do. Or we would now have AI, which also needs to talk to the system. And it would be something like a tool call or eventually an MCP interface. So you can connect your desktop AI tool to your no pressure and get it to make changes to its configuration. So we have these two sides, and how do we bring them together? One step is discoverability. What does this mean? The system should be able to tell whoever is talking to it what are the things that can be configured and how you do that. What are the steps that need to be taken to make that change? And that means that we also need workflows. Everything becomes a workflow where there are steps to be taken, and then the system executes those steps and interacts with the other side, whether it's a person or an AI, and kind of interact between the two so that we achieve the goal. That means that in the middle, we need something, and that something in no pressure is called the management bus. This management bus packages all the domains and primitives into a standard format so that it can be consumed through connectors by the users, and then it helps manage workflows for the domains so that the users, the AI, can interact with those domains and primitives to achieve certain objectives. So that's the abstract way of looking at this. We are going to now jump back into coding with ChatGPT 5.2. We will now add the search capability, which is going to be a new domain, which will give access to the search results through the management bus and also allow users or AI to interact with it to, in this case, rescan all content to refresh the database. With that, let's dive in. All right, so here we go. Here is the current view of the content library, and what we want to do is that in place of the search titles, we should have just search, that search is everywhere. And then the other thing is that in system, where we have currently only log rotation, we should have a search section where we can trigger a complete re-indexing of all our content, specifically all our markdown page files. Okay, so let's get started. Let's fire up Codex. Go to the search work tree and start it up. Oh, there is an update, so let's do the update. All right, so we are still using GPT 5.2 codecs, going back from 5.3, that was not rigorous, but we want rigor. Please give me the list of Caravaggio documents for the administration user interface as well as the management bus and domains. I would like to add a new domain which will be called search, and I would like to add admin UI elements that will leverage that search capability. I will also want to add a CLI command that I forgot to mention earlier, a CLI command that will be able to also trigger certain search actions. So let's first give me the documentation that we already have for administration UI and the management bus and domains, and how we should fit in this new domain. All right, so we have the list here. So we have the management bus, which is the inside part of everything related to administration. And then we have the admin UI, which is the actual web page or web UI, and it's an SPA, and it uses a WebSocket connection to communicate with No Pressure and the management bus. And that's also concept going into the AI native direction, because with an AI talking to No Pressure, we would have something like a WebSocket, at least an interactive communication rather than something like a REST API. This is already in the right shape. So what we have is that we have the domains, and this is where we will have to add a domain. And then we have user management. That's a pure administration function. So we will have something like that for search. And then obviously it found the search-related feature documents very good. Now, okay, so we have the domains. So we will have a new domain ID. Then we will add... so it's saying we can actually directly add it into UI. That's a possibility. So let's think about that. So it is the CLI, and I'm just thinking that we would probably add the command in the CLI document. Okay, so what I would like to do is add a new Caravaggio document in the management subdirectory for the search domain. And I would also like to use that to consolidate all the actions. So I don't want many separate action plans, but let's keep the actions in that one document. So we need to add the primitives. So I'm thinking that we will need to have a search primitive, which is literally searching for the whatever the user enters. Then we will have an invalidate one and an invalidate all primitive. Now, how do we want to integrate this into the admin UI? So on the admin UI, we replace the existing search. So I'm guessing that that can go into the UI.md under admin. So that's going to be an updated requirement document. I think that in the CLI, we would also add the search, and it would return a list of IDs and document titles on the command line. And it would have two commands. So one is the invalidate one and the invalidate all. And I think we will need to have a bit more clear about that. And then on the web UI, we would add a button on the list among the actions, which should be a search reset or invalidation for that particular item in the list, and it should only show for markdown documents. And then for the full rescan, we would add it on the system page in a new section. Now, I'm not sure where the current system section documentation lives, so please figure that out. For the CLI, I would think that we would have search as the domain name as for others, and it should be abbreviatable as with everything else. Then we would have find, which could go down to F, I guess, and then accept any additional parameters which would then constitute the search query. And so that means that the user doesn't need to put that into a pair of quotes on the command line. They can just enter, any number of words. Then we would have, I would say, invalidate with a single parameter for the ID, and reset, so search reset, which is the invalidation of all. So basically removing all the search database and redoing it. Actually, I think that is also good to use. So let's call invalidation when we are invalidating a single document, and let's call it reset in the search box on the system page as well. In the actions column, perhaps we should call it INV only, not invalidation, because that's very long. In the meantime, I will just, oops, I'm in the wrong place. I will just get the other pieces ready. Well, okay, so one thing I realize is that I don't think we want an invalidation button in the list. It's just too much. Plus redundant, because whenever we save on the admin UI, then we already get an invalidation anyway. So I think I will take that off, but I keep it in the command line because that behaves differently. And then there are also a couple of questions. All right, so this is good. Let's check those. Okay, so it found the system settings very good. For any other Caravaggio which will have updated requirement, please add a reference in the action plan in that document to the main action plan. Still keep all the actual actions in the search Caravaggio we are creating now. For the search domain ID, let's have 21. I think that's the next one, skipping to the next tens. We already have max hit count of 16. I think that's hard-coded, which I would want to keep. In fact, the search itself should not change in terms of the internal behavior. So please validate this. That's what I recall. For now, we will keep search hits as ID, title, and alias. Again, I think that this might well be already in the system, so please validate. If the invalidate command on the CLI does not have the ID, then it's an error, and it should return an error. I think this should be validated when reading the arguments. For the CLI output, I would have ID, then a space, then alias, and a space, and then title. For command aliasing and abbreviation, please use the existing method. Please review and report back what you have found. The label for the reset button on the system page is reset, and we will remove the requirement for the I and V button in the list. So I do not want now to have an invalidation button on the admin UI. We will only have this on the CLI. Good question so far. All right, so let's look at the next iteration here. Okay, so that's fine. It's just what we display out of those. I don't want the tags to be included on the CLI, but we can include those on the UI. I want the hits to be displayed on the UI, limited at 16. On the CLI, we can display on up to 128. And the truncation could be specific in the WebSocket connector. We should still have the length bounds, so less than 3 doesn't really help much. So we should have 3 to 256. CLI output should have a dash if there is no alias. Let's include the tags also in the internal structures. It will not be, so tags will not be shown on the CLI, but I think that we can show the tags in the admin UI list. So that's a good catch. Now, in addition to that, the current admin search would already match the tags as well. That's my understanding. But we also need to introduce a tags filter. So if the user has selected tags on the admin UI content list, then the search itself should be limited to pages that have exactly those tags. The search behavior here with the new content search function should match the existing title search function. So however we implemented the tag filtering in search now should also apply the same logic in the new content-based search. As with the public frontend, I would like to have relevance-based sorting coming from the search subsystem, and then within that we can do alphabetic searching as well to stabilize the list. One thing I didn't mention is that on the web interface we already have a tags filter. So for example, I can filter to YouTube here, and then what I want to do is retain that, of course. Now we already have a markdown filter for the list, but it doesn't really matter for the content search because it only works with markdown for now anyway. So let's see how we are progressing. I think we are getting close to the to a good specification here, and then we can let loose the AI to do the full build. Now, what I will do after the actual implementation is that I will do a quick code review, and we will employ all of our CLI friends here. So we will have Codex review its own work, but we will also have Claude and Gemini have a look at the new code. This is getting there. All right, so let's get these final questions closed out. Well, actually, so that's not good, right? So we need to come up with a better solution here. I nearly missed it because obviously right now we can search the titles of other content and we need to find other content as well. So we need to figure this out. How would it be most convenient? So if I type, I would like to have relevant results, right? And so I would want to prioritize items where the title itself has it. And then secondly, the content as well. So we need to actually make this more sophisticated here. Actually, we will need to make the admin search more sophisticated. What I want to do is that I want to actually retain the title-based search for the admin results. And this applies everywhere, CLI, admin UI, everywhere. So we will need to improve the current admin search capability. What I would like to do is that if the any of the titles match, those get priority. So title is priority, and we will search across all content, and then we will use the MD toggle on the admin UI to restrict it to markdown as before. Then we would also add the relevance prioritized and then title and ID tie broken list of additional items, and then we consolidate. So deduplicate anything that has already been found by title will not be duplicated based on the relevance filter. So that would give us a prioritized list with those with matching titles first, and then additional content that matches based on the relevance search. The user should not see any difference between these lines, so the same fields should be returned and displayed, but that should be the internal behavior. Okay, so this is a funny thing that happens sometimes when the whisper gets completely crazy. So let me repair that. Okay, so what I did was, in VoiceSync you can select different models to use for transcription, and I switched it to Parakeet for a moment, which is not bad, but Whisper is a lot better when you have domain-specific words in a text. It's actually pretty good, but sometimes Whisper gets completely crazy and then Parakeet comes to the rescue. So this is what happened this time. We still need to edit it because it also made funny mistakes. Okay, so I cleaned this up. Now let's add one more thought, that the relevance-based search, so the TonTV search should include the tag and alias fields as well, not just title. So exactly as before. I want to structure it so that when using the management bus to access search, there should be the primitive which accepts all the search filtering, tags, markdown toggle, everything. And it does as before the title-based search, taking into account tags and the markdown toggle. Then it queries also the admin search which uses TonTV. This should then return potentially more results. And then this new primitive should consolidate what it found based on the title search and appending to the list the TonTV search results. This should have no impact on how search works on the content pipeline side. I would have forgotten that we actually do need title search because the rest of the content is title searchable only. All right, more questions. Let's look at this. All right. Okay, so hopefully last questions, and this looks good. All right. No, I think I was wrong. We don't need the cap, and this is because I also forgot that we actually have proper sorting, right? So this already works, so we should not lose that. So my mistake. But this is good because AI reminded me that we already have sort. So good job, Codex 5.2. Right, so I think I made a mistake about how this should work for sorting and limiting, because I was thinking about the front end side where we have a drop down list, but here we have a proper list. So scrap the 16 limit for the WebSocket side. We use the 128 limit everywhere. The sort controls will continue to apply, and the ordering of title priority will only be for the CLI. So the CLI doesn't have this sort filters. There we will list the title matches first and then the deduplicated rest. But although we should generate a list which has the title matches first, ordered by title and ID, and then all the additional matches, and that's what the endpoint or the primitives should generally return. Afterwards, it should be displayed by the appropriate sort ordering. So we will not ignore that, but we will do this as a two-stage process. So first we get the title prioritized consolidated full list up to 128. And then if it goes to the web UI, then we do the column-based sorting. Right. Eventually we will figure this out. Yes, that I forgot to answer. Yes, I would like to add the tag and mark down only optional parameters. But how would this look like in practice, given that we would then have the search term? How will the argument parser work? I think it's a good idea to have those filters. Why not? The management bus will work with that. All right, this is acceptable. Let's finalize the documents. Once you have updated this, are there any other open questions? All right, okay, so this looks good. Let's log this in. And then we can go ahead. Are you able to implement this in this session, or should I start a new one? All right, I will do a final review of the document itself. Let's say 80. Okay. Okay, so this looks good. Good. Please execute. All right, so it's finished and it looks like it's working. I did some off-camera quick test to see that things are working, and they look like they do, but I still want AI to run a full test suite. It's always a good idea to check that actually nothing was broken. Please run a full test suite. All right, so the tests are done, and it's good because it also ran Clippy, which I would have asked it to do anyway, but smart. And one thing I always do is I tell in the repo setup, or even in my central setup or configuration for the agents, not to run the full suite. Now this might sound counterintuitive. I tell them to run the targeted tests and to build the targeted test as soon as possible so that they do get feedback. But running the full test suite usually takes a lot of time. And then if you have that iteratively, then it slows down the whole process a lot. And I would much better have them progress and run the targeted tests than run the full suite. But before we finish, we should always get the full test suite done. And it looks like it's all good. So we can lock in these results now. Okay, well, we are back, but there was a little bit of a problem. I use ScreenFlow to record what I do on screen, and for some reason it crashed. So the whole part where we do the review with Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT is gone. What we are left with is the final action plan for the issues that we need to be fixing. So just to give you an idea, we had 3 files. We had the ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini reviews, which were then consolidated into the search review. And the way it looks like is that, here is Gemini, and it's highlighting different points. Some of them were actually good, some of them were a little bit less important. And then we had one, which was the search review. You don't see the original issue listing anymore because these have been consolidated into an action plan. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why this happened. I didn't have this issue before, and let's see what came out of this. So I just want to make sure that the action plan makes sense. Please could you tell me, where did all the detailed technical content go? How will you be able to implement the action plan without the actual details? Okay, so no. We just, so now you get to see the original one. Okay, so because I had to redo it, this is wrong. I asked Codex to convert this into an action plan, and it removed all the content. So that's not very good. We will have it redo it again. But anyway, so you have these issues, and then we mark each of them whether it's validated or not. So just to give you an example here, this was one issue where we realized that the search level, where we had the intention, and this is from the second part in the 3-part series, we had the intention that search would filter by role. It actually didn't filter, and so we now tell it to do the filtering. Then I would just want to show you something that is invalid. So for example, page cache rebuilds on each admin search without injected cache. And this is one of the silly things. So Claude tends to identify issues that don't really materialize, or they are actually not really something that is a bad thing. In this case, what happens is that we have the management bus, and the management bus is is used whenever the no pressure server is active, right? So it is the means by which a no pressure server is able to manage itself. But if you run a CLI command, then basically no pressure is talking to itself. It's connecting through a socket to the management bus. It tells this is the CLI command, and then the running server no pressure does what it needs to do. However, if there is no running server, then there is something called the CLI bypass. Then we are not talking to a management bus because it doesn't make any sense. We are just executing the primitives. and then there is no page meta cache available. But this is irrelevant because there would never be, and for every time you start the CLI by itself without a running server, it's just normal. So these are some of the points where we just said that these are invalid issues. Okay, now let's talk to codecs. All right, so I reverted the change. What I will like you to do is convert the document again, but this time do not remove any issue text that is relevant to valid issues. So here is the step-by-step action for you. First, remove the references to the source documents. So we don't want to have ChatGPT-review.md or Gemini-review.md referenced. We don't need those anymore. Second, remove all the invalid issues. We don't need those either. And third, you keep the issues as technical content, and then you add an action plan at the beginning of the document, which consolidates all the actions that need to be done to remediate these issues. And now we hope for the best again. Oh dear. Jimmy Knight. It's not the Jimmy Knight, it's Gemini. Oh dear. Whisper. What have you done? Chat GPT, yes. You know, actually, I have to say that, and you would have seen it, Whisper is pretty good at this. I mean, realizing that someone is talking and in the middle there is a file name, it's not bad at all, but sometimes it just goes Jimmy Dash. Anyway. All right, so let's have a look whether this was butchered or done correctly this time. Okay, so let me just check. Okay, so here are the issues. They are still here. Okay, not deleted. We don't have the references. Very good. And then we have the action plan. Okay, and it references the issues. It's brilliant. Okay, so what I will do is now I will remove Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. I will log this in. Final issues. Okay, so now what we have is a good action plan, and we will just have this run. Take a last look at this. All right, here we go. I would like, oh, hold on. Would you be able to implement this in this session, or should I start a new one? Okay, so here is what I would like you to do. I would like you to iteratively go through each step of the action plan. For each action, implement the change and ensure that tests relevant to that piece pass. Once that is done and the action is complete, please create a commit with the action plan item number and the short summary of what has been done. Do not reference the issues, just the action plan item. Okay. Right, so how I would then proceed now is that I let ChatGPT go about its business and do this, and then once done, with a clean slate, we will ask it again to review that all the actions were actually done and validate that. So let's come back once ChatGPT is done. Okay, so we are back, and it seems that the whole action plan has been completed. So we will do the first step, the whole test suite, and then we will do a validation round as well. Please run the full test suite. Okay, so we are back, and there are problems, which is interesting. Okay, so this seems that the end-to-end test might not have been adapted to the new search capability. So we need to figure this out. Please assess what causes these errors. It seems that there might be a misalignment with the new search functionality. It could also indicate a regression, that is something breaking because of the new search function. Particularly worried about the sorting, which should still work. All right, we are back. And indeed, I'm back because I also did the school run in the middle. Now, I also had to have Codex redo the fix for these two failing tests because it went completely haywire. It started to undo actually the changes that we have done to the search capability on the admin side. So I cleaned the context window and I got it to redo the fix, and now it's passing, so that's good. And it was very simple. It's basically, once we have added a proper full text search capability, there were more search results than expected. So this had to be realigned, and it was missed during the transition process itself. Anyway, these are now passing. So we have the code changes done. We have the review done by the 3 agents. And then we have the action plan done to fix the issues that they have identified. And we have all tests passing right now. So the last bit is to get Codex to review that we have actually done all the action items, which is not always the case. So let's just get it to verify. I will start with a new empty context window. We have finished implementing the issue remediation and the action plan in search-review.md. Please validate the code base and documentation that those are in sync and that all the action items and issues in the search-review.md document have been indeed completed. Do not make any code changes, just give me a report. Ha! Yes, I should have said thank you, of course. Thank you, Whisper. Well, now we have search built into no pressure. It was about 6 or 7 hours of gross work time. Most of it was done by AI by itself, and about 2-3 hours of direct interaction, which is cut down for you in these 2 videos. The previous one laying the foundations, implementing the core search capability and indexing, as well as the public-facing side of the search. And now we added the internal admin UI side as well. And it works. We got about 7,000 new lines of code added and an additional 700 lines of documentation. And I think it's worth to stop there for a second, because I don't know if we should code what we have done vibe coding. It doesn't feel anything like a vibe to me. It's more like slog. But there you go. What it definitely shows is that it's not like one can simply say a few words and then AI figures out everything else. It needs a lot of direction and a lot of thinking on the engineer's part to actually get things right. And that's demonstrated by basically 10% of output over this period was documentation that is still not very detailed level. It's relatively high level, but it's required still to go down that deep for the AI to produce into the architecture that's the system, adhering to the standards, making sure that it does the right thing. So I think that the intelligence part is really still on the engineer's side. And by the way, this is experimental, right? So I don't recommend just leaving it to the 3 agents to review the code. So the next step would be to do a full manual code review, and that's what I would recommend. However, this project, no pressure, is the experiment where we try to do the whole process with the help of AI. So thank you for joining me on this journey, and see you on the next video.
Hey everyone, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. Thanks a bunch.